Do we need to do more to tackle anti-Semitism?
Do we need, a broad question, do we need to do more to tackle anti-Semitism? Maybe with the comments from the Labour Party in mind. Barry Gardiner.
Yes, we absolutely do. Look, I studied Hebrew as one of the subjects I took at university. I attended my first Seder about 35 years ago. I helped to bring the Jews Free School from Camden to my own constituency in Brent North. I'm appalled by the rise of anti-Semitism in our society. Here in Liverpool, your Labour Council took the really progressive step of inviting an old friend of mine, actually, Rabbi Martin Vandenberg, to come and speak to the councillors, to explain to them, to make them aware of what anti-Semitism is like and how it affects the community. The Community Security Trust, I think this year, has identified 22 attacks on Jewish schools. On schools. These are our children, and they're facing those sort of attacks.
And why does the leader of the Labour Party acknowledge that anti-Semitic attitudes have surfaced, I quote him, more often in our ranks in recent years, and the party's been too slow to process it? Why has that all happened?
Look, it should not have happened. I find it shameful, as a member of the Labour Party for whatever it is, 40-odd years, I find it shameful that this is part of what's happening in my party. But, you know, the Labour Party is now over 500,000 strong in this country. It reflects not only the good policies and virtues and things that, the values that Labour has always stood for, but of course there are people that reflect all walks of society, and inevitably we reflect society in its bad points too. What we are absolutely committed to is in eradicating it from the Labour Party, and that's what Jeremy has made absolutely clear. And just last week he wrote to every member of the Labour Party, sent an email out to every member of the Labour Party saying exactly that the Labour Party must be a home for everyone. Look, my party has a history, I think, above any other party, of combating racism, of combating anti-Semitism, of being at the forefront of equalities legislation, whether it's for women's equality or gay equality. We are absolutely proud of our human rights record. And this is something that we will tackle, but it's something that if we simply say, oh, this is a problem for the Labour Party, that's an easy cop-out. It's a problem for society, and the Community Security Trust has made it very clear that there is a rise of anti-Semitism in our society.
All right, Barry,
we have to deal with it.
Jonathan Freedland.
Well, Barry is right that it's a wider problem than just the Labour Party, and it is throughout society, and anybody who visits a Jewish school or a synagogue and sees security guards outside understands the reality of that and how difficult that is for this very small community in Britain. But the Labour Party is in focus, as Barry's just acknowledged, and it is for a good reason. He said there that it's bound to reflect society, and just as there are going to be racists in society, there'll be some racists in the Labour Party. The reason why that's not quite good enough is, for one thing, we expect, as you said, Labour to be better than that. It doesn't exist just to reflect society, it exists to change society.
Absolutely.
And so we want it to be better than that. But it also betrays a misunderstanding, as if somehow the racists who have been exposed, the anti-Jewish racists, the anti-Semites, who've been exposed in Labour, somehow wandered into this party by mistake, that they thought it said BNP on the door, and they just accidentally found themselves in there. That's not how it worked. The complicated thing here is anti-Semitism, racism, is a general thing, but there is a very specific kind of left anti-Semitism, and people struggle to understand this. And just to take a moment to explain how I see it, most racisms are pretty simple. You just despise and look down on the race that you hate. In the case of anti-Jewish racism, there's this odd dual character, which is, yes, you look down on and despise this group that you think are inferior, but anti-Semites also say that Jews are somehow cunningly above as well as below, that they're powerful and secretly pulling the strings of the world, that they are the secret force of power. And there's this dual attitude to look down on, but also somehow to see them up here.
Can you connect this with the Labour Party, which is where you began?
That is what people on the left are particularly susceptible to that idea, because they think their job as being a good person on the left is to challenge power. So if you've believed and swallowed this anti-Semitic canard that somehow Jews are the secret power behind the banks, etc., then you're going to subscribe to it. And that is what we're seeing in the Labour Party, I'm afraid. If you look on these social media posts, the anti-Semitic expressions are about the old anti-Semitic medieval themes of Rothschilds and bankers and the secret power in the world. They've not been about Israel, like some people have alleged. But it's been about that. And that is something that the left and Jeremy Corbyn need to be particularly explicit about. They need to say, we have a specific problem.
But, Jonathan, if these are the old tropes from medieval times, then it's not because of the Labour Party, and therefore the association with the Labour Party is not the reason for this being particularly...
But I'm trying to say that the left and Labour are historically, and for the reasons I've tried to explain, particularly susceptible to this message, and it has been particularly prevalent on the further left, the far left, and that's why Jeremy Corbyn, who comes from that tradition, needs to be able to say that of himself, that he too, unfortunately, and obviously he's not an anti-Semite, but he has been looked past anti-Semitism when it occurs from people that he deems ideological comrades of his. And there's case after case after case of that, and he needs to admit it.
OK. The person there.
Anti-Semitism isn't being tackled as seriously as it should be. I have 2 children who go to a Jewish school here in Liverpool, and they have been verbally abused just because they have the menorah on their uniform. They're aged 11 and 7.
Awful. Absolutely.
Joe Johnson.
Well, I do think Jeremy Corbyn is not displaying the leadership that you would expect of the leader of a major political party. He was very, very slow in condemning... He was very, very slow in condemning the anti-Semitic mural. He has let Labour MPs who attended a rally against anti-Semitism in Parliament Square be hounded in their own associations and threatened with deselection. This is completely outrageous failure to show leadership of the Labour Party. I spent this morning in Finchley, in North London, with members of the Orthodox Jewish community, and at times it made me think that we were revisiting some of the darkest decades in European history, because this school, it's a school for Orthodox Jewish boys called Pardes School, had high levels of security on both gates, high gates, to protect the children at this school from anti-Semitism. This is a real and terrifying phenomenon in our society right now, and everybody in public life has a duty to stand up and get rid of this terrible scourge, and I don't feel that the Labour Party is playing its part.
OK. You sat there.
I just wanted to ask how much of this is... How relevant is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? Because Jonathan gave a talk with Mehdi Hassan in the Huffington Post a while back about this, and I mean, obviously things are different now to how anti-Semitism was in the past, and I just wanted to ask what kind of difficult relationship is there between that.
Nicola Horlick.
One of the reasons I'm proud to be British is because this is a very tolerant country. And I think it's really incumbent upon us, it's not just people in public life, but everybody, to ensure that we have true tolerance and that we accept everybody. It is totally unacceptable for schools to have high security around them, irrespective of whether it's a Jewish school or a Muslim school or any other sort of school, or a Christian school for that matter. So we have to deal with this. In terms of political parties, clearly, if there are people within a political party that are Holocaust deniers, they should be expelled from that party, and action should be taken immediately. There should be no hesitation. And I think the problem is, when you're a leader and you hesitate, that then questions whether you're a good leader. So I think Jeremy Corbyn needs to think long and hard about this and take a more active role and be a better leader in trying to seek out and get rid of anti-Semitism within his party.
Okay. Kate Andrews.
In 2016, Jeremy Corbyn ordered an inquiry, which was led by Shami Chakrabarti, into anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. And that inquiry found that the Labour Party was not overrun with anti-Semitism. She was then later awarded with a lifetime peerage in the House of Lords. What exactly has the Jewish community been rewarded with? You don't have to go back years or months, you just have to go back the past 48 hours to see attacks on the Jewish community, to see a labor officer in Lambeth tweeting out memes that compare Israel to the Nazis, to see Ken Loach calling for Labour MPs to be removed if they demonstrated against anti-Semitism. This is a deep problem, and it goes even further. The Times YouGov poll on March 30th found that 77% of Labour Party members think that these calls of anti-Semitism are actually to discredit Jeremy Corbyn and to discredit criticisms of Israel. Yes, anti-Semitism can be found across society, but the Labour leadership has done nothing to address the very, very serious problem within its own party, and we need more good people like Barry to step up and be very loud about this, because it should not be tolerated anywhere, but I mean under no circumstances should it be tolerated at the highest level of politics.
All right. So, Barry Gardiner, you've heard the accusation that hesitation is bad in a leader, that lack of clarity is bad in a leader, not fit to lead the party. What's your plan?
Okay, look, let me try and pick up a number of the points that have been made. First of all, what Joe said, because he said about, and Kate also, about the threats to deselect members of Parliament, Labour members of Parliament who turned up at the rally outside of Parliament. In fact, I was talking to one of them this morning. She happens to be my PPS. She has 2 Jewish children. She was there protesting against anti-Semitism. And she was criticised by some people. They said, well, didn't you know that rally was going to be used to try and attack Jeremy Corbyn? She spoke to the leader's office. Jeremy has sent a personal letter to her constituency saying that she absolutely had the right to be there because anti-Semitism is a scourge on our society and he will not tolerate it.
So Ken Loach was wrong to say they should
Ken Loach was absolutely wrong, and Jeremy has said as much. Jeremy has said exactly that in the letter that he sent from his office to Anna, to support her for being there to protect her children, just like the lady was saying she wanted to protect hers. In terms of leadership, let me say, and the gentleman also talked about process. The process within any party, and I think it's the same within the Conservative Party, is that discipline is not done by the leader, it's done through the General Secretary of the party. We have just changed the General Secretary of the party, and the new General Secretary of the party, Jenny Formby, actually said that it was her #1 priority to eradicate anti-Semitism from the party and to follow up on all the things within the Chakrabarty report. So I think Jeremy has done the right thing. I think he's supported those members of Parliament who wanted to campaign against anti-Semitism. He has absolutely made it clear that it is unacceptable in our party. And if I can just ask people to step back for a moment, I don't think that there has been a leader of any political party for decades who has the track record, personal track record, that Jeremy Corbyn does as somebody who has always stood up for human rights, who has always called out racism and who has always been on the side of the underdog.
All right. Do you agree with that, Joe?
Well, no, I think clearly not. I think Labour MPs are facing deselection. They're being hounded by momentum activists who are demonstrating all of these old anti-Semitic tropes. And it's a travesty, the lack of leadership he's showing.
OK. By my book, we haven't got that much more time, so I think we'll move on to another question. Sorry, who was that shouting out? You can just say it, if you would.
Record.
What?
Like, Boris Johnson, the Foreign Secretary, the current Foreign Secretary, has actually been racist on record many times. Genuinely, like, this is terrible.
What? Sorry, what? Yes. What examples? Go on, say it again.
Boris Johnson, the current serving Foreign Secretary, has been racist on record so many times, and we just like glance over it in the media. We just like, oh, it's sound, it's Boris, whatever. Like, it doesn't. No, it's not cool. It's not acceptable to have like a bias from
not
like
a racist bone in his body.
You want to answer him?
Yeah, not a racist bone in his body.
Okay.
It's not fair to ask Joe about his brother, but Boris Johnson did refer to people in Africa as pickaninnies with watermelon smiles. That is on the record. He should never have used that language. It was racist language, but I don't think it's fair to go after Joe Johnson about his brother.